Hi everyone. Let's talk about something really interesting in JavaScript. Something that we all love to use all the time. It's called console.log that we have been using in lots of places while working on a different framework, whether it is vanilla JavaScript or a different framework that we rely on, but it's always there. Let me open up the Visual Studio and get started. Oh, I already have it. Okay, so here I have really basic setup of just a simple index HTML file, something that I have set up to run inside VS Code, and I have a script where I'm importing the faker.js, which is being used to generate some random data for the users. And I'll be showing an example of how we can leverage different methods in a console class, um, print. um, data as per our requirement. Rather than just doing console log all the time, we can kind of leverage these APIs um, to an extent where it makes our life easy. So let me head to H tools and launch the project. And before it goes crazy with the windows, let me move this one inside this one. Okay. So for your reference, there is nothing crazy on the HTML side. It's just like hello world and some lorem ipsum. Um, the key focus should be on the console window here. So as you can see, I'm trying to write something, but this time I'm trying to give a style to the specific message that I'm writing. So if I just do step over here, you can see we can print this really nice hello world. It has its own CSS specified, and yes, console.log can do that. Now, going further, as you can see on my screen, we have 10 users generated by faker.js library. And if you just do console.debug and try to print very first object, it should print it. But the key here is by default, if you look at the log level, it's not set to verbose. So you may not see that. And if you set it to, let's say, verbose, it should give you the debug statement for the very first user in the list. Let's revert it back to default. So now let's say you want to see the users. Now, usually when you do console.log users, it kind of dumps everything in there and it's really hard to see what is going on with the collection of those users. So you can usually use console.table and let's see what it does. Look at that. Uh, we kind of have a nice stable view of our objects where our properties are um, depicted as like the columns, and also the values of individual object properties is converted into rows. So this kind of gives us a nice view of object collection if you want to look at that. All right, let's go further. If I do console.log, sorry, the console.table also accepts a bunch of parameters, basically the array of properties that you can specify for your needs, and then it will only show the table view for those many properties for your collection. So that is something really useful. I'm a fan of console.table for the most cases, but sometimes if you want to do customization for printing logs, basically printing collection and with custom columns, this is useful, right? And as you can see, simple console.log users will kind of dump this all users, where you literally have to drill down, do a couple of clicks to get to the point where you can see the properties of your object of interest. Now, of course, it works for the entire collection, but let's see how it does for the single object. So let me step over one more time. And as you can see, this is a simplified view of your object. Just like how we dump the single object, this is just more like um, table view for your single object. Now, if you do console.info, it's more like printing the information. This is what you get. And I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with console.error, which gives you error message like this in your console window. Right. Before I go further, one thing I would like to mention that if you are experimenting with these features, do not try to push this code anywhere beyond your development or testing environment. It should not be part of your production environment. Something to keep in mind. Okay. So next interesting thing is console.group. And this is where you can specify bunch of data that you want to print under the same group. So group can have also a group can also have a nested group. So one example is here. You can say parent group is set. As you can see, the message is being printed under that group. And we have another group generated as a child group. And the next line goes under that child group. And we can just end the group by using method group end. And that's it. This is how you get the group messages in the console. If you are debugging something crazy and if you want to have the nested hierarchy, this is something you can leverage. Now, of course, a warning is being depicted into console by console.one. Okay. So next thing is pretty interesting. This is more like a timer function where you want to figure out like how much time it took to execute certain statement. You can leverage this another nice API from console class, console.time and console.time end. And here I have a small piece of code that kind of waits for 4 seconds and then just prints something on the console. And I want to understand like how much time it takes. So if I just do this, as you can see, after like 4 seconds, it kind of printed what we wanted it to. And then like once you do the console.time end, it prints the default with like how many milliseconds elapsed. Of course, we are in a debugging process, so it will be more than 4 seconds. All right. Uh, Next is where you can use console.count to figure out how many times specific line got executed. Now, the example that I have taken here is from the MDN documents. So we have a function grid, and inside that we want to understand like how many times that was called. So that really depends on the value of the local variable that we have set. And if I just put a breakpoint here, right before our next interesting part, as you can see, let me just run that. As you can see, this is really an interesting way to figure out like how many times specific thing or specific line of code got run. So for Bob, that was executed once. For Alice, um, executed thrice. So every time, I mean, because we have this console count here, it kind of prints that. So this is something useful. I'm not sure like where will you use that often, but I just thought to mention it for the knowledge purpose, knowledge sharing purpose, right? So the last one is console.asset. So let's say out of our users, I want to understand mm, what are the user names where length is not even. And in that case, it should print an error message with name of the user and the length. You can do console.assert, specify the condition which you want to make the assertion on, and then you specify like what should be your output if that condition is false. So let me put a breakpoint here. So it runs fine. And there we go. Out of those many names, I think almost four, five, 9 names are there where the length is kind of odd. And this is just an example of like how you can verify a condition in your code and then print out something on the console just to make sure like whether that condition is met or not. All right, so that's all for now. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you think your time it is worth your time, please share and subscribe. Thank you.